If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to Mindshock True Crime. This is your host, Bruce McGuire, and you are listening to the Jonbenet Ramsey series. This is part 17, Full Suspect List 2. We're going to examine even more potential suspects or POIs, even more rabbit holes, and access graphics. Ramsey's company, which had just passed the $1 billion mark. Acquired by Lockheed Martin, lot of connections across the board there. Many believe there is a vast conspiracy. As always, we will examine all of these claims and all of these suspects and POIs in every avenue of investigation in typical Mindshock fashion, with logic and reason at the forefront, attempting not to fall for any silly logical fallacies like on mainstream media reports, documentaries, and many other podcasts. As always, if you find the podcast interesting and informative, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Help support the Mindshock podcast. Help us get more mind-shocking content out there with logic and reason at the forefront. You can also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube, have access to the exclusive streams and chats, and help support the channel that way. Make sure you're subbed to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. If you're still not getting them, just like and comment a whole bunch more on a whole bunch of videos. Apparently, that's how the YouTube algorithm works. If you don't comment enough, you won't get notifications. You might even get unsubscribed. A lot of weirdness with the YouTube algorithm. Like and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcast requests. You can also be a guest in the podcast depending on your tier. Questions, comments, serious thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. Okay, so make sure you listen to at least the previous episode because we are going to be building on top of that. So, for those that can only appeal to incredulity and desperately grasp that logical fallacy to soothe their dissonance, that there are criminals out there that don't always act alone. That there are some very, very sick individuals, and they could be part of rings of criminals, and they may even include government personnel with political connections, a la Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein Island, all of these things that coincidence theorists and authority worshipping cultists pretend don't exist because they're too mentally weak to examine any of these possibilities. Not that anybody should believe anything in any direction. Obviously, the burden of proof is on positive claims, but to hallucinate that there's zero chance that there's criminals out there that don't act alone and are part of these rings, and some of them include very rich and powerful people dialed into political circles, I mean, of course, that is very, very silly, especially in the post-Epstein-Maxwell era, where even the most gullible of goofs have seen on the mainstream media these charges against them, and all the funny business and ties to other politicians, etc., etc. So I built upon Thera Kuhn's post on Reddit. I'm going to do a quick recap here regarding a poster without lamps there'd be. There is zero evidence that Jonbenet's murder was in any way related to a child prostitution ring. Thera Kuhn responded, "What do you call evidence? There is zero evidence of anything when you dismiss everything people put forward as evidence as not being evidence." I mean, wow. That is a very good point, is it not? Because, I mean, evidence can be anything. There's hard evidence. There's rumor-based hearsay-type evidence, which would be evidence, but not necessarily admissible evidence in a court of law, but it's still some kind of evidence. Now, there's all types of different evidence. Veracity, of course, varies, which is why on Mindshock we attempt to discern the veracity of all of these different types of claims with logic and reason at the forefront in an attempt to find the truth in objective, logical, and neutral fashion without presupposing, oh, there's definitely no evidence of this, oh, it definitely happened. Obviously, that's a clueless goofery, which we do not we do not condone that on Mindshock. The motto here, of course, is the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. But continuing Thera Kuhn's post here, let's list things we can say for certain. I'm not sure this is certain, but let's see what Theracoon wrote here. John Ramsey's father was connected to a pedophile network in Michigan during the 70s by being the person to sign off and subsequently required to check in on North Fox Island. Okay, that's actually not bad phrasing. So he's not necessarily there's not necessarily evidence that he even knew that some of these criminals in North Fox Island were part of a pedophile network, and he's not necessarily party to those crimes in any way. So he may or may not have known about it at the time. He may or may not have participated, but apparently he did sign off on the runway. He was contemporaries with someone connected to the network as a hitter named Steven Stanislaw. After the scandal of North Fox Island broke, he quietly stepped down, not running again despite being pretty young to retire. John Ramsey and Patsy Ramsey hired a pedophile connected to the production of child pornography to photograph their daughter in pictures everyone for years has stated are risky. Well, another good point there is they didn't necessarily know that, right? Because he was referred to them. So they may have done that without knowledge. So there is a gray area here. I'm not claiming, again, the Ramseys might be 100% innocent of everything. But again, the evidence is stacking here, not necessarily evidence that they had knowledge or a party to, but that these other individuals are very, very shady. On these pictures are stamps that were used by the same network above as symbology for other pedophiles to know what other materials were available. The picture with stamping has symbology to boy or girl pornography, according to someone a little bit more knowledgeable than me. Adam Starchild, what a name, the financial mind and key player of the North Fox Island operation, was publishing books out of Boulder at Paladin Press during 1996. That is another coincidence for the stack. I mean, what is this weird connection between Charlevoix and North Fox Island and Boulder, Colorado? I mean, there seem to be endless connections between these two locations. It is kind of weird. Isn't it kind of weird? Does anybody else find that kind of weird? CavDef George has put together an absolutely massive collection of information connecting Fleet White to a powerful pedophile network. And we'll be getting more deeply into that. Again, if you haven't checked out the previous episode with the alleged Judge Long connections and the allegations brought forth by Nancy Krebs, make sure you check that out. Continuing the post here, the actual murder, literally every single element of it can be explained if you understand that it was done by the same network who killed Michigan kids in the 70s. Specifically, the whole thing was a carbon copy of the murder of a girl named Jill Robinson, exactly 20 years to the day, to the hour, as Jonbenet. Wow, what, they have an hour? I wasn't aware there was an hour of death. That's a little bit weirder, because the day, okay, Christmas, day after Christmas, that might not mean as much, because the holidays, of course, are rampant with crime across the board. But to the hour, that's a little weird. Was that adjusted for time zone? Is Charlevoix, Michigan the same time zone as Colorado? Or is it one time zone off? Jill was found in a white blanket of snow. Jonbenet half covered in a white blanket on the cellar floor. Jonbenet was found wearing size 12 underwear, Jill's age, with the word Wednesday, the day she was taken. Both were overkilled, killed using two methods. Jonbenet was found with beaver hair in hand. Jill Robinson was found in front of Big Beaver Road exit sign. You know what's weird? And Theracoon didn't even mention this. Beaver Island, where allegedly Kathy O'Brien, who claimed she was a victim of CIA MK Ultra programming, claimed that she was abused and that Beaver Island was one of these locations where this was done. North Fox Island for the boys, Beaver Island for the girls. And supposedly she even claimed to have seen John Ramsey and Jonbenet Ramsey on a boat ride onto Beaver Island on at least one occasion. Again, this is Mindshocking. I'm not claiming anything is true or untrue. We're just going over allegations and testimonies and different theories. But even if the Jonbenet Ramsey case is not connected to the Jill Robinson case, Jill Robinson found it next to the Beaver sign, and then Beaver Island being this, I mean, there's a lot of weird connections here. That can't be disputed. Now, what exactly is connected to what and what it means, that, of course, is highly disputed. But that is kind of weird. So, the beaver hair in Jonbenet's hand, I mean, what does that mean? I don't know. And you could dismiss that as being connected to Beaver Island, except for the fact that the Ramsey home in Charlevoix is right across from Beaver Island, overlooking Beaver Island, with John Ramsey's father, supposedly the guy that approved runways in that entire area, including North Fox Island. What does everybody make of this? I mean, Kathy O'Brien, of course, some people believe she's a crazy kook. And you know, the other thing that doesn't make any sense. If her allegations are true, wouldn't you expect her to be a crazy kook? Where is this hallucination from coincidence theorists that crazy kooks aren't telling the truth because they're crazy? Are they telling the truth? The fact that they went crazy because of all of this, either brainwashing or abuse or whatever, wouldn't you expect them to go crazy? Are they crazy because it is the truth? Again, that'd be a false cause logical fallacy by those claiming that, or not just false cause, but compositional logical fallacies, ad hoc, post hoc, all of these things. It's just circular reasoning. I mean, it all kind of gets lumped together when you just automatically dismiss people as being crazy. Were they crazy before they made up the allegations, supposedly? Or is it all true and that's why they're crazy after the fact? A lot of different things to consider here. But continuing on here, both have the same initials, Jill Robinson, Jonbenet Ramsey. Both had long-winded notes written by the killers. The believed shotgun that was used on Jill, according to a confidential source, was the Victory SBT shotgun. The ransom note is believed by FBI to have actually said Victory SBT based on the fact that C wasn't abbreviated, meaning it was an incomplete thought. I believe personally that was added because it was just too on the nose. Yeah, it's a weird one. There have been a multitude of different pedophiles who have come forward admitting to a role in her murder without saying they were alone. Both John Mark Carr and Oliva have the exact same story. They participated in the murder of a child, but there were many there. Stephen Singular found numerous people on the dark web seeking out Jonbenet snuff videos and various compromising photography. Others, a part of the network, randomly ended up in Colorado, including a professional printer named William Kay. He lived in Michigan his entire life before randomly disappearing to Colorado during 1996, shortly before her murder. His family was oblivious he ever left the state at all, but records show he set up a house about 30 minutes from the Ramsey home. Okay, I have no idea who this William K. guy is, but here's the thing. Everybody wants to look at who left the area immediately prior to the murder. Has extensive investigation been done on what kind of criminals moved directly into the area shortly before the murder? And possibly also left immediately after. There was a piece of artwork found in the Ramsey basement that is absolutely one of a kind, and the only other similar artwork, rotatable artwork, different art depending on how it's hung up, I've ever found was connected to the Michigan murders tied to the same ring. The ransom note contains all 4 children's names from the original Michigan murders. It also contains the name King twice. It is believed there were 2 victims with the last name King. The amount just keeps adding on and on and on. A pedophile network did this. It's well understood by many that a huge cover-up occurred in this case and continues to occur. So, regarding a source for Beaver Island and John Ramsey being involved, where Kathy O'Brien said this, Therakoon pointed to this website, timeofreason.com, with a reference here. This website's no longer up, but here's the post here. Kathy O'Brien, an MK Ultra victim, states that a passenger manifest of the ferry between Traverse City, Michigan, and Beaver Island not only showed Kathy's father, who sold Kathy into the MK Ultra program, but also John Ramsey, Jonbenet Ramsey's father. They were headed to an obscure mind control training camp on Beaver Island. According to investigative reports, Jonbenet had stun gun prod marks all over her body. We know that a stun gun was used in the Johnny Gosh kidnapping. In addition, Kathy O'Brien states she was used in the production of a military film, How to Create a Mind-Controlled Slave Using a Stun Gun. This very video is reported to have been found in the Ramsey home. So if anybody else has further references to this, I mean, this is pretty insane. This is pretty weird. So, because there's two groups of people. There are some that believe Kathy O'Brien, but they don't believe she said this about John Ramsey. They believe that was somehow misconstrued. I don't know if there's any more sources to this, but Thomas Aquino, Colonel Aquino, the Satanist Air Force colonel, some believe is connected to the Johnny Gosch case. Obviously, Kathy O'Brien has mentioned him, and we're actually about to get even crazier here. A good post by Samar Candy following up here. That's pretty damning information, I do have to admit. So Kathy is saying that her father and John Ramsey had ties to one another. How can Kathy be so sure that John Ramsey, her father, had ties with was the same John Ramsey who was the father of Jonbenet? Nancy Krebs thought that Uncle Johnny, who abused her and who was eventually found out was that John Ramsey was not John Ramsey's father. It was a Johnny Ramsey. Different birth date, same middle initial, though. I went over that in the previous episode. Well, I believe both Nancy and Kathy are telling the truth. They could be mistaken, and in my opinion are, about the true identity of the John Ramsey they knew. A very clever poster by the name of Mama found a John Ramsey in the Kern County Sex Offenders Registry who is more likely to be the one that both Nancy and Kathy knew, in my opinion. You know what's weird, though? If the Whites are all connected in this, what are the chances that the Fleet Whites Sr. and or Jr., they both have a good friend named John D. Ramsey? There's two different John D. Ramseys, and they know both of them? I mean, Ramsey's not exactly as popular as Smith. I mean, if the guy's name was John Smith, okay, yeah, sure. Although, to be fair, I know a lot of people who have known a John Smith. How many people have known two John Smiths in close connection with family and or friends? That's a good question. Any Mindshock listeners out there that know people who have not one but two John Smiths? But not only that, but the same middle initial as well. That's a curiosity. That exponentially stacks the odds. And again, Ramsey, I don't think I've even known a single Ramsey, anybody with the last name Ramsey. I know it's not an obscure name. There's a lot of Ramseys out there, but to know two John D. Ramseys or John B. Ramsey? As for Kathy saying that Patsy Ramsey had ties to an MK Ultra owner, I would very much like to know more about this. Did that date back to her childhood? What do you think the ties were? I've read that Fiona Barnett has to say about MK Ultra, so I find this very believable. Could she be in a similar situation to Nicole Kidman, do you think? Marion number 1 responded that after Patsy won Miss West Virginia, she was named the official state hostess by the state legislature. Her job was to be a promoter of West Virginia state government events such as ribbon cuttings, and according to her pageant-era business manager, Senator Robert Byrd was one of the people whom she would accompany at these state functions. The association with Byrd, Kathy's own alleged programmer, is interesting because Patsy shows signs of being abused by her father, Don Powell. You and I have come to the same conclusions about this, who worked for likely the CIA front Union Carbide. She was described by a pageant judge as having a very controlled and programmed way of moving, quote, a little automaton, end quote. And there's a history of CIA-affiliated parents who are pedophiles giving over their kids to trauma-based mind control programs. Okay, hold on a second here. I mean, we've been in Mindshock land for such a long time, and we're getting deeper and deeper. Is this the greatest Mindshock of all? Statistically, what are the chances that not one, but two parents, so Patsy and John Ramsey both separately had connections to MK Ultra affiliated individuals, or alleged MK Ultra affiliated individuals? So what are the chances that Kathy O'Brien, who claims that her programmer was Senator Robert Byrd, happened to also be in close proximity with Patsy Ramsey? Now, the people that say Kathy O'Brien is making all of this up, even if she is, statistically, what are the chances? I mean, this is crazy. Even if it's all made up, the links here between not one, but both of Jonbenet's parents? I mean, we're a bridge too far several bridges ago. So let's get a little crazier for the people that think Kathy O'Brien made all this up. So Kathy O'Brien's first assertions were made in the book Transformation of America, published 1995, prior to Jonbenet Ramsey's death. I mean, what does everybody make of this? And it might have been even earlier because the publication date is 1995, but obviously it takes a certain amount of time to put the book together, to edit it, to get it ready for publishing, all of that, self-published or not. It doesn't just magically appear. It takes time to write it, etc. So this was all prior to Jonbenet Ramsey's death. So I don't know if anybody's actually come up with the receipts in terms of the boat manifest that John Ramsey really was on a boat ride to Beaver Island. But Kathy O'Brien supposedly... Okay, she supposedly saw documentation that her father and John Ramsey both took a boat to Beaver Island. Also, these links to the Johnny Gosch case, links to the White House. I mean, this is just really weird, all of these links. The same names keep popping up. I mean, I don't know what to make of the stun gun being used in the Johnny Gosch abduction, as many alleged that account was real, the PJ Smith account that was attempted to be suppressed. Again, if you haven't checked out the Johnny Gosch series on Mindshock, check that out. It's the most comprehensive series on the case. Also, some people dug up that Jonbenet Ramsey also did a beauty pageant in Charlevoix. So if there is some kind of widespread network in Michigan, Jonbenet competed in Charlevoix as well, not just Boulder. So is focusing only on Boulder not going to be enough here? And again, just the amount of individuals popping up in both the Charlevoix or Michigan area and specifically Boulder, Colorado, that's kind of weird. Now also, so Ramsey confirmed in 1998... There's actually a CNN transcript here. Report Jonbenet evidence could point to intruder January 11th, 1998 on CNN, on edition.cnn.com. Now, there's reference here to the stun gun might have been used on Jonbenet Ramsey. And Schiller quotes a police source as saying that an instructional videotape for a stun gun was found in the Ramsey home. You know, that's a little weird. How many people have stun gun instructional videos, rich or not? I mean, yeah, a lot of people have stun guns, but how many actually have specific instructional videos? And it's kind of vague. Which video was this? Was this really some kind of MK Ultra military video? And if so, was Kathy O'Brien really in that video? That's insane. Marion number 1 posted this regarding the stun guns. Per the Ramsey's 1998 interrogations, this stun gun video was marked as coming from Spy World Miami, a store selling amateur spy gear in Coral Gables, Florida. They made a similar claim in Death of Innocence about getting it from a spy shop in Coral Gables. John claimed he was there in 1994 for the Super Bowl and decided to pick up some equipment to help detect bugging of Access Graphics phones. Okay, hold on a second. So for the people who think John Ramsey was just some kind of small-time guy who got lucky with Access Graphics, in 96, where they crossed the $1 billion mark, as early as 1994, he's getting spy equipment because he thinks Access Graphics phones are bugged. Now, I mean, this is weird. This is all just so weird. No matter where you look, there's just a whole bunch of weirdness here. I really don't know what to make of all the weirdness. It just does not make a lot of sense. The clerk gave them a bunch of videos, including the stun gun tape, and he took them home and forgot all about them. A couple things do make me wonder about this. When I asked Spy World in September 2017, wow, so Marion #1 is actually doing some legwork here. This is their post. When I asked Spy World in September 2017, they denied providing stun gun instructional videos. Note that John claims in DOI that it was an ad, not an instructional video, and are unsure if they ever did. Okay, so they might have not even gotten this tape from Spy World, but Spy World denies having any stun gun instructional videos. So if John Ramsey is really connected to some kind of MK Ultra operation, did he try to explain it away using some kind of convenient excuse at a spy shop that he knows he did visit and hopes that that would get lost in the mix? But who knows? Why would this millionaire business owner of a defense contractor subsidiary need to resort to an amateur spy shop for basic physical security needs? Also, why would Ramsey himself be doing this? I mean, that's kind of weird. Wouldn't some lowly employee or some kind of independent contractor be brought in to detect the bugging of the phones? I mean, the head of the company is going to get his own spy equipment. Does anybody else find that weird? Also, the Miami Super Bowl was in 1995, not 1994. Uh-oh. And I wasn't sure why they didn't check this more carefully in the book they published. Incidentally, beyond a spy shop in Coral Gables, there was also a spy front in the same city. Wackenhut, a security contractor and CIA front, it relocated out of Coral Gables in, incidentally, 1995. Wait a second. So first of all, Marion #1, quite the researcher here. So an actual CIA spy operation was in Coral Gables in 94 and they left in 95. I never came up with any real answers. It was just another rabbit hole to go down that abruptly ended. Yeah, this is really weird. It seems weird to me they'd be relying on some amateur spy equipment for security when they were owned by a major defense contractor, and as I discovered last year, had a board of directors primarily filled with such people from Lockheed. Why were they so interested in Access Graphics? Yeah, this is all quite weird. Quite weird indeed. So let's go over the Access Graphics timeline. This was posted by user since deleted on Jonbenet Ramsey subreddit. So no clue who it was. I wanted to include a timeline I've been working on. I will edit to add more as I find. I have some other stuff I have saved that I will also be editing. Okay. In 1980, Sanders Associates bought Cal Comp. In 1986, Lockheed Martin, or Lockheed Corporation, now Lockheed Martin, bought Sanders Associates. In 1988 to 1989, 3 of CalComp's distributors merged together to form Access Graphics. John Ramsey's company was one of them. Access, which was formed in 1989 from the merger of 3 companies, CAD Distributors of Boulder, CAD Sources of Piscataway, New Jersey, and Advanced Products Group of Roswell, Georgia. Huh. In 1989, CalComp attempted to buy their company from Lockheed in an effort to become an independent firm again. That's weird. Okay. This was in the reported in the LA Times, April 5th, 1989. Approximately 1991, Access Graphics is awarded a contract with Sun Microsystems. That was actually a huge company back in the day. From LA Times, May 9th, 1991, Access Graphics was recently awarded a significant contract to carry Sun Microsystems' line of workstations based on the Unix programming system. But the distributor knew that it would not qualify for a bank loan to help finance the increased workload, Conlon said. 1991, CalComp bought Access Graphics, who had become their largest distributor and had been recently awarded a major contract with Sun Microsystems. So before I continue here, this isn't just John Ramsey and one little company. So he's definitely in the mix of various different company mergers and buyouts with these massive companies like Lockheed. So the story that it was just one little company and it got bought out, I mean, there's clearly so much overlap here with different companies. 1991, Calcomp bought Access Graphics, who had become the largest distributor and been recently awarded a major contract with Sun Microsystems. From funding Universe.com company histories, Calcomp Incorporated history, Calcomp grew steadily in the early 90s as the company introduced major new products in each of its divisions at a rate of about 5 products per year. In 1991, the company strengthened its presence in the CAD/CAM market with the purchase of Access Graphics Technology Incorporated, a leading distributor of computer-aided design equipment. The company also entered into a number of strategic alliances. Ramsey merged his computer company with 2 other firms in 1988, forming Boulder-based Access Graphics. In 1991, Lockheed Martin acquired Access and Ramsey was made president. So by 1994, he had already been president of this major company, and he's going to a spy shop himself to buy some amateur equipment? Does that story make any sense to anybody? And apparently he can't afford to get a window fixed in his basement in 1996. The dot-com bubble, Lockheed owned Sanders. Sanders owned Calcomp. Calcomp owned Access Graphics. Lockheed sold all of these during the dot-com bubble between 97 and 2000, starting with Access Graphics in November 1997. This dot-com bubble lasted from 95 to 2000, and from mid-2000 to 2002 was the dot-com bubble burst. Note, John Ramsey mentions in the law enforcement transcript, I'll be going back to include the quote and link for this, that he was made aware in 1995 or 96 that Lockheed planned to sell Access and other companies. He mentioned awareness that his position in the company was not secure. That's curious. Even in an article after the sale of Access Graphics, when John Ramsey was replaced, there was this quote. This is from the Daily Camera, 97. His forthcoming departure was not a surprise to employees because a change in management often accompanies a change in ownership, said Access spokeswoman Julian Anderson. In 1995, Lockheed Corporations and Martin Marietta merged to become Lockheed Martin. Just 8 months earlier, then Secretary of Defense Les Aspin had called together executives of the nation's largest defense contractors to inform them that the Pentagon's budget would be drastically shrinking. It was time to consolidate, streamline, and adapt to changing times. Unbeknownst to each other, Lockheed and Martin Marietta had each researched prospective merger candidates in the wake of that meeting and found each other to be on the top of their respective shortlists. Lockheed and Martin Marietta had much in common. Each had a rich heritage, roots that traced back from the earliest days of aviation. Both had beat back hostile takeover attempts, and both believed in acquiring new divisions to strengthen their companies for the long term instead of selling off divisions to make a quick profit. So if they both weren't the type of company to flip a company for quick profits and were in for the long haul, then why did they start selling off companies? Also, what's kind of weird here, I mean, call me a crazy coincidence theorist. The Secretary of Defense is Les Aspin, A-S-P-I-N, not A-S-P-E-N, but regardless, the Secretary of Defense associated with Lockheed Martin is acquiring Access Graphics and then selling it off in Colorado. Is any of this just simply too much coincidence for people? But continuing on here, in 97, Lockheed sold Access Graphics. This is Daily Camera. Access Graphics, which hit $1 billion in revenues last year and has already surpassed that mark this year, was having trouble making good profit margins, probably because it was a standalone operation. Nisbet said GE may change that. In 98, Calcomp was near bankruptcy, and Lockheed refused to extend credit to them. LA Times, December 30th, 98. 99, Calcomp was largely shut down. LA Times, January 16th, 99. In 2000, Lockheed sold Sanders to BAE. In 2009, Colorado State University will honor Sun Microsystems and Lockheed Friday, October 5th, as part of an event celebrating the grand opening of the Academic Village. Sun Microsystems donated Sun Thin Client computers and servers to the Engineering Academic Village, allowing for a workstation for each student in the building, and provided equipment to enhance the computing environment in the electronic classroom. Sun has supported the College of Engineering with more than $1 million in gifts in kind in the last 10 years. Lockheed Martin has maintained a long-standing history of funding the College of Engineering and student design studios. In the past 10 years, Lockheed Martin has donated more than $500,000 to support such initiatives as the Engineering Academic Village, and most recently provided an additional $20,000 to the project. Note, 10 years of donations puts them starting these donations to CSU in Boulder around 1999 to 2000. Lockheed and Sun wouldn't have had affiliations with Boulder after November 99 when Lockheed sold access to GE. As well, 2000 to 2009 would have been financially difficult years to the dot-com bust beginning in 2000. In fact, Sun Microsystems ended up being acquired by Oracle in 2010, yet they were donating money to CSU during this time. Yes, I know about tax write-offs, but it's still interesting to me. In 2010, Sun Microsystems failed to survive the dot-com bust and saw major declines starting in 2000 and was acquired by Oracle in 2010. NetworkWorld.com, the downfall of Sun Microsystems. The dot-com bust hurts everybody, but it's arguable that Sun was most hurt of all because it had profited so much in the run-up to the boom in the first place and hadn't grown its business out as deeply as IBM and some others had, says Pund IT analyst Charles King. Ex-employees and or suspects of Axis Graphics. An employee is fired from Axis Graphics for smoking on his lunch break. He brought a lawsuit against the company for violating Colorado's smokers' rights laws. The employee won $15,000. Wow. A spokesman said the company won't hire smokers in order to control health insurance costs. Okay, now we have these two other POIs that some allege might be responsible. And supposedly, John Ramsey, the first suspect John Ramsey ever named on December 26, 1996, was Jeff and Kathy Merrick. They left Access Graphics in 1996. Jeff Merrick lodged a complaint with Lockheed Martin about unethical behavior happening at Access Graphics. He later was awarded, anybody want to guess the amount of money he was awarded? Going once, going twice? $118,000 from the company. Not 100, not 110, not 120, but $118,000. This would be the person John Ramsey would go on to first name as a suspect. But they were awarded the money, so why would they want the money again in terms of some kind of ransom attempt if this is what people are alleging? So let's get a little bit more into the background of Jeff Merrick. So he allegedly met John Ramsey in 1971. So they'd been together for quite some time. Both worked at AT&T Columbus, Ohio, started Access 1994, quit in 96 when Ramsey needed to cut salary. Said Access owed him $118,000 but settled for half. Filed ethic violations with corporate headquarters at Lockheed. In Death of Innocence, page 166, quote, Jeff Merrick, who had threatened to bring me and Access Graphics down when he left the company in 96, end quote. I believe that's the Ramsey quote. John Ramsey quote. Huh. That's kind of weird. So Nedra's suspect list included Jeff Merrick and his, quote, vicious wife. Their alibi on Christmas visited Kathy's brother-in-law in Aurora, Colorado, then visited Dick, Diane Foote, and were home 8 p.m., watched TV, went to bed. Okay. Supposedly the Merricks, according to Donald Powell, thought that the Merricks were at Pasta J's restaurant December 18th. And if you haven't checked out the previous episode, I go over Pasta J's and everything associated with Pasta J's in this case. Yeah, this is kind of weird. Very, very weird. I mean, I really don't know what to make of this. Because just the amount. I mean, if the Ramseys were responsible for the ransom note, would they have made it $118,000 just to point suspicion at Jeff and Kathy Merrick? But if so, why did they only reference this suspicion once or twice and then mostly focused on all these other suspects that they pointed the finger on? It's kind of weird. It's kind of weird. So another former employee, Mike Glynn, was also supposedly at this dinner at Pasta J's. In Perfect Murder, Perfect Town by Lawrence Schiller, on page 130, references Detective Thomas interviewing Mike Glynn. Glynn left Access Graphics supposedly on good terms in 1996. So Detective Thomas interviewed Mike Glynn, another former Access Graphics employee. He was cooperative. He told the detectives he had been with his in-law in Tucson, Arizona, the evening Jonbenet died. Glynn had met Ramsey in 1991 while he was on the football coaching staff at, anybody want to guess which college? Anybody? University of Colorado, and joined Access Graphics in 1992 as head of international business development, where his knowledge of several foreign languages would come in hand. Would it also come in hand for anybody recruiting CIA agents or CIA operatives or something? Glynn and Tom Carson set up the company's overseas sales and distribution center. By 96, however, Glynn didn't see room for advancement in the company and decided to leave. Ramsey offered him more money to stay, but on May 3rd, 4 days after Jeff Merrick left, Glynn went to work for CompuWare in Tucson, where his family preferred to live, so they could be closer to Glynn's ailing mother-in-law. So that's plausible right there. But it is a little curious that it was only 4 days after the Merricks left. However, John Ramsey said he was cutting salaries, which is the reason he got rid of Merrick, yet offered Mike Glynn more money to stay. Now, how would that make Merrick feel if the boss is saying there's not enough money to go around while offering other guys more money and firing him? And what was this dinner at Pasta J's all about? Was it really just... And this dinner was December, so they left in May. Merrick, last day of April, and Glynn in May 3rd. And yet they're having dinner at Pasta J's December 18th? Not too long before Christmas. What is this? That's a little weird, but I mean, I don't know. I guess if he's in town for other reasons, he wants to catch up with old friends. How good terms is he on with Jeff Merrick? I mean, okay. Gary Merriman had told the police that Mike Glynn had a personal relationship with the Ramseys and was one of the few Access Graphics employees to have been invited to the Ramseys' home. In fact, the two families had often vacationed together. 2 weeks after his interview with police, Glynn provided hair, blood, and handwriting samples. Letter from Mike Glynn. John Ramsey seemed like an introvert. He was just nice and shy. He never wavered in what he was like, and you could tell he was a deep-thinking guy. I never saw him ruffled by any circumstances. Sometimes internally he must have been. One time we were negotiating with Sun Microsystems, our largest vendor, and the frustrations of dealing with the game played in the computer industry got to John. Yet he stayed level-headed. He steered away from confrontation. Don Powell was a real father figure around Access. He had the ear of everyone when he was human resources director. His job then wasn't to hire or recruit anyone, but he sure solved a lot of difficulties that arose in that company. Everybody enjoyed Don. He was always around. He lived by himself, and every once in a while, Don and I would sit on his porch, have a beer, and talk. When somebody new was hired, he would take them to his porch and have a beer with them. While John was low-key, Patsy was off the scale as an extrovert. Once John made a mildly sarcastic remark, quote, "Patsy spent more money renovating the house than I did buying it," end quote. As I got to know John better, I saw the impact of his older daughter's death on him. Beth was her name. He was just eaten up inside. He read a lot to try and come to terms with it. It changed him. Or did something else that happened at the time change him? Again, we don't really know. Some of these really hardcore conspiracy theorists allege that Beth somehow had some kind of information and may or may not have been either going public with it or something of that nature. Or it could have really been an innocent car accident. Again, this is Mindshocking. I'm not claiming anything is true or untrue, but many people have many different theories. Our families went on getaways together, sometimes into the mountains where we stayed at our family's condo. We did the usual things families do. We skied, we cooked our own meals, just hung out. In the summer, we hiked. There was never any display of money on John's part. John enjoyed being outside. He loved Boulder. He loved his kids. And whenever I saw them, he always gave Jonbenet and Burke equal time. He invited my family over for dinner several times. Patsy cooked. The speculation that I ended with on bad terms with John is just not true. In October, just before Jonbenet died, I was trying to get John on our board of directors. But our bylaws limited the number of directors. At the same time, he was in discussions with Lockheed about possibly reacquiring Access Graphics and going public. So all this other stuff is just gossip, innuendo, and gross speculation. When I left, Jim Hudson was just coming back to run the European and Canadian operations. I'd blow into town every couple of months, and I'd call John or whoever was in town and would have dinner. I'd host a few. This is Mike Glenn's letter. So Perfect Murder, Perfect Town, page 449. That same week, Lou Smith received a letter from John Ramsey, who gave the investigator his list of suspects in his daughter's murder. Jeff Merrick, Mike Glenn, and Jeff Marino, all of whom had once worked for him, and Bill McReynolds, who had been Santa at their Christmas party. To Smith, it was clear that Ramsey was desperate for the police to check these men out because they had all but stopped looking for suspects other than him and his wife. Smith, too, was frustrated. He was eager for the case to be turned over to the DA's office because he knew Pete Hofstrom would be a fair arbiter of the evidence. After the first of the year, Smith showed Ramsey's letter to Alex Hunter, who then showed it to the police. The detectives found it odd that Ramsey had written to Smith at home and that he had named Jim Marino as a suspect when Marino was appearing on television in support of the Ramseys. What else is weird, though, did John Ramsey suspect Mike Glenn and Jeff Marino or Jeff Merrick and Mike Glenn were friendly, even though he had basically gotten rid of Merrick, who had sued subsequently, and Mike Glenn supposedly on good terms? So, referring this mystery dinner at Pasta J's in Steve Thomas's book, page 121, they had also recited a list of suspects for us: Jeff Merrick, Mike Glenn, and Jim Marino, all former Access employees who had been seen at a mysterious dinner with Tom Carson, currently the company's chief financial officer. Then he shocked us by also offering the name of Fleet White. The Ramsey camp had turned on one of its best friends. Gosage and I returned to Access Graphics for an appointment with CFO Tom Carson, who had been so negatively portrayed by Patsy's mother and who was now linked by John Douglas to a suspicious dinner with Merrick Marino and another friend, Mike Glenn. Unlike most of the others at Access, Carson was open and helpful and had a rock-solid alibi. At the time Jonbenet was killed, he was in France with his girlfriend Natalie and her parents. He dismissed the controversial dinner as a get-together with old friends, not a conspiracy to commit murder across a table in a public restaurant in which John Ramsey was part owner. I would devote many hours to running down the stories of the others named, and the result was always the same. It was an innocent gathering that meant nothing to our case. But here's the thing, though. If it wasn't an innocent gathering, would anybody ever admit that? So, I mean, what would be it's kind of weird to just take their word for it. Not that I'm saying it's not innocent, but it's kind of, I guess it's not that weird if the current CFO was really friendly with both Merrick and Glenn. Merrick, who had left on bad terms, got a settlement. Would Tom Carson not care about that? I mean, we also don't really know how they really felt about John Ramsey, because would they really ever actually say after the guy's daughters died? So Jim Marino, again, back to this timeline right up here, couldn't find a date when he left the company. He was named as a suspect by the Ramseys, but seemed to continue a friendship with John Ramsey. Marino had known John Ramsey since the 70s in Atlanta. Marino had an accident in 78 and was temporarily confined to a wheelchair, so John Ramsey hired him for a sales job, which turned into long-term employment. Marino was making $51,600 a year when he left Access. Marino stated in Vanity Fair that he was never invited to the Ramsey home. So that's kind of weird. Is this really a case of the current CFO just randomly having a get-together dinner at Pasta J's with ex-employees? I mean, that's a little strange, too. I mean, again, this is just so weird. If this was a fictional novel or movie, wouldn't it just get so instantly rejected because this would be all deemed too unrealistic in terms of coincidences? Another employee supposedly at this dinner was Curtis Fisher, who left the company right before that Christmas in '96 and supposedly had a disagreement with John Ramsey. So there seems to be quite a few disgruntled employees, and that's not really what's strange. What's strange is that these disgruntled employees are having dinner with the current chief financial officer of the company at Pasta J's just days before Jonbenet Ramsey is found dead. Does anybody find that a little too coincidental? Okay, so just when you think, okay, but we've been so far into Mindshock land this whole time. I mean, this next moment, this really seems like the biggest psyop possible. This is just unbelievable. So the Merricks were supposedly awarded either $118,000 or settled for half of that amount. Now get this. Bud and Sandra Henderson of Access Graphics filed Access Graphics filed a claim against them and owned the company $18,000 and owed another $100,000 in debt as claimed in a court hearing. So what's 100 plus 18,000? So we have two references to $118,000 specifically. Like, what are the statistical chances here? This is all just pure impossibility, but let's look at this. Okay. So supposedly, Bud and Sandra Henderson of Henderson Technology owed Access Graphics $18,000. So Bud Henderson started Henderson Technology in 1984, sold telecommunications equipment, bought supplies from CAD, distributors of Boulder. So he divorced Sandra in 1995. Distribution was $18,000 owed each. Moved to Colorado in 91. Access Graphics claimed Bud owned $145,000 unpaid invoices. Bud said the signature was forged. Is that a classic defense there? So it's not okay, so we have 18,000, 100,000, and 145,000. A few different numbers here. So Sandra was operations manager for Jim Hudson, owner of CAD Distributors that later merged into Access Graphics. Okay, she was later fired from Access Graphics. So from Perfect Murder, Perfect Town, page 129, January 17th, Thomas and Gosage continued an interview at Access Graphics with comptroller Susan Reichart, who told them about Sandra Henderson, a former employee, who was in trouble with the law, and her husband Bud, each of whom owned the firm $18,000. Add $100,000 to either of them, and you have the ransom note, which gave the detectives cause for suspicion. They put Bud and Sandra high on the list of those to be interviewed. So Henderson Tech ordered equipment from Access Graphics, which Henderson then sold. This is Perfect Murder, Perfect Town, page 139. Sandra paid the bills and kept the books. In 1991, without prior notice, Access abruptly placed a credit hold on Henderson Technology's account and told Bud Henderson he owed the company $145,000 for invoices that his wife hadn't paid. He was shown a promissory note with his and his wife's signatures. Henderson had never seen it and said his signature had been forged. Henderson later said that his wife had agreed to pay off the debt over the next 12 months, made only one payment, and then defaulted. Within a week, Access Graphics fired Sandra Henderson when it was discovered that she had altered Henderson Technology's account at Access. Henderson said that his wife tried to delete the balance that was owed. The company that bonded Access Graphics employee paid the firm $100,000, leaving a balance of $40,000 to be paid. Henderson made one payment of $4,000 before they divorced in '95. In family court, their outstanding obligation was $36,000. It was divided into two notes for $18,000 each. By then, Henderson's believed that John Ramsey was furious at him and his ex-wife. That's interesting. So the company that bonded Access paid $100,000, $40,000 left to be paid. Henderson's made one payment of $4,000. And then they were divorced, so then there's no longer lump sum. It's $18,000 for each of them. Statistically, what are the chances here? I mean, I don't know what to make of this. This is weird. Perfect Murder, Perfect Town, page 141, letter from Bud Henderson. Everything they asked me to write was from the ransom note. I wondered if the police had my telephone tapped. You have to wonder, what do you say over the phone? You start to think people are following you. Every time I walk into a restaurant, go into a bar, the first thing I do is ask myself, who in the hell do you see in there that looks like a detective? I've been stopped twice for absolutely no reason. They say I was weaving. They check my ID. These are Boulder cops. I hear a knock on my door. I open it and a video camera is running. The interviewer sticks a microphone in my face. Have the police talk to you. Hard copy went and taped Sandra going to prison. The media knew we owed Access Graphics money. How they found out, I don't know. One writer told me Sandra orchestrated Jonbenet's murder from prison to get back at John. I have one friend that calls me killer. Finally, I did a long interview for Hard Copy and American Journal. It wasn't a hell of a lot of money. I still get calls, a call a week from Hollywood, from New York, even from the Daily Camera. This is Bud Henderson's letter. Okay, so that's curious. So the people that say that the police never investigated anyone else, apparently they did. And again, we really don't know how many of Boulder cops are on the take versus not on the take, if there is some kind of conspiracy, drug running, whatever, which may or may not have anything to do with the Jonbenet Ramsey case. So there's a lot of weird stuff going on here. I mean, I do find it curious that 118,000 came up twice with Access Graphics in place. Not once, but twice. Technically, there's 3 people, because since they got divorced, that's 2 different people with 118,000 amounts. Anybody find that weird? I mean, so what are the options here? I don't know if this could be coincidental. So whoever wrote, even if it wasn't the Ramseys who wrote the ransom note, would they have knowledge of these 118,000 amounts? Because that's way too specific of an amount. It can't be coincidental. Somebody knew something, whether it was the Ramseys that wrote the note or not. Someone knew, or even if it wasn't the Merricks or the if it wasn't any of these people, it was someone that knew all of these people and these amounts. And if there is some kind of vast government conspiracy, would they have put that into the ransom note on purpose? So that way, whatever the Access people that had nothing to do with Jonbenet Ramsey's murder, they would think it was definitely John Ramsey. Because who else would know that? I mean, are they just really screwing around to this level? So Affectionate Fly with another mind-shocking post here. Check out these links. Marion 1 shared them with me. They are hard to find. Apparently, some woman who was later hired by the FBI believes her husband set John up. She posted it on some old social media website, then she disappears. I don't know what happened, but I suspect that several people were abusing Jonbenet. I suspect John and Patsy set her up to do naked pics with that photographer. I suspect some very influential people, perhaps political, enjoyed the porn, if not more violations against that innocent child. I suspect the inner circle of John's business understood it was involved in a pedo ring that includes John's daughter. John pisses off a colleague. He sets him up. The whole energy of the case was spent on spin because there is no way the pedo ring could be exposed. Blaming everyone and everyone creates mental exhaustion. That keeps people from actually entertaining the idea that our own government, the CIA, and local leaders were knee-deep into kiddie porn. So let's look at these posts, no longer available, but Web Archive, of course. This was posted on Topics. So a lot of crazy stuff has been posted on Topics over the years. So someone's very close to the Ramseys. So James' son's ex-stepmom posted this July 13th, 2006. I believe that the only involvement the family had was with a VP at Lockheed Martin who had a grudge with John and wanted him out of the succession plan. My ex-husband, the VP of Corporate Compliance, spent the 3 weeks preceding the murder at the Access Graphics facility, part of the Lockheed and Martin Marietta merger. I provided information to the Boulder Police Department, and the next day the FBI handcuffed my ex-husband, stripped him of all his security clearances, and he was fired from LMCO and his position on the board of directors at Los Alamos National Lab. Sandia Corp, Hanford, Oak Ridge, and other facilities. In a separate investigation, he lied about his involvement. He threatened me that if I ever came forward and told the authorities, the same thing would happen to our children. Now, ages 15 and 12, I'm not afraid any longer, and Jonbenet is long overdue for justice. Yeah, I mean, this is truly a mind-shocking post here. So now we even have Los Alamos wrapped into this? I mean, wow. I mean, this is why people think it's a psyop. I mean, just the level of overlap here. I mean, there's even KGB, MK Ultra overlap if you haven't checked out the previous episode. So someone asked, did they test his DNA? Did he have a stun gun, rope, knowledge at tying those particular knots? What size man is he? Does he drink from a glass? Would he have an accomplice? Where was he Christmas Day? This poster responded, no, he is a strategist, highly skilled and trained by the most elite agencies. He was most commonly used his services in military planning and met frequently at The Hague for strategy sessions. Now we got The Hague in here. And is a graduate of the LMCO Senior Management Executive training at the Y River Institute. He served in intel in the Army, was a cryptologist during Vietnam, and worked his way up the corporate ladder via various strategic assignments. He wouldn't have been the person to commit the murder. He would have been responsible for the tactical aspects of executing the plan. I doubt his DNA is at the scene, and if it were found in the house, he was a business colleague and admitted friend of John Ramsey, so it would not implicate him conclusively. A couple of weeks after the murder, he completely broke down, wailing in our basement, claiming, quote, John Ramsey is my best friend, end quote. I knew this to be completely untrue, and his behavior was extremely unusual. Remember, the man was a defense executive, not a pediatrician. And if, in fact, he was the first responder as VP of Compliance Validation, remember, the ransom note indicated it was an assault against John Ramsey's company. Then he would have had a valid excuse for being there. At the very least, he is guilty of obstruction of justice. He knows way more than what he's telling. The FBI has removed him from all access to classified information, and he now lives in England. I was not privy to the outcome of the investigation by the FBI. I suspect his involvement on the following facts. 1, he considered himself intellectually superior to everyone around him. Quote, grow a brain. Was a common insult he employed. 2, he was not at our home on the night of the murder. I assumed he was with his mistress. 3, he received repetitive calls from a man claiming to be from Access Graphics following the murder. The caller initiated the call minutes after my husband left the house en route to work in the morning. I found the incident so disturbing that I filed a report with the police department because I was fearful someone was watching the house. Our house was broken into 2 times following the calls, but nothing was disturbed. The alarm went off minutes after I left, and the intruder was gone before the police responded. On one occasion, I left a $100 bill on the table, but it was still there when I returned home. 4, after our separation, he was abusive to our son. He was consistently able to evade conviction, even though 7 organizations filed child abuse allegations against him, and the investigation produced a 192-page, 3-count criminal indictment of child abuse. He is above the law and very skilled. I mean, these are very specific points here. I mean, some allege that this would have to be crafted very carefully by a hoaxer, or maybe it's the real deal, but either way, very specific here. 5, I hired a PI during our divorce. The investigator claimed that he was known as a ghost in the PI business. He also noted that my ex was involved in a large number of fatalities. 12. I responded that he was responsible for 151 facilities worldwide. I grew up in Louisiana, where one refinery explosion was capable of killing 12 employees at a time. But most striking was my ex was usually present or had visited recently when the accident took place. Of note was a time when we were on vacation in Florida in August '98. He was on the board of directors at Los Alamos National Lab, and the G3 picked him up in Jacksonville en route to Los Alamos for a weekend board meeting. He was supposed to return on Sunday evening, but called me to report that there was an electrocution at the plant, and he was notified when the plane was on the tarmac. So they postponed their return trip. When we arrived home in Denver, I read in one of the papers that the fatality occurred on Monday. The death at the time of the Wen-Ho Lee controversy was ruled an accident, but I'm skeptical. Because I refer to planned accidents as murders, I filed for divorce 2 months later. Someone asked this individual why they started posting here in July 2006. Response, I began posting here because I have provided some of the evidence I have to the Boulder Police Department, and to my knowledge, there has been no follow-up. The only action that took place was my ex was removed from his position, stripped of security clearances, and now lives out of the country. I'm frustrated and feel guilty that Patsy died without realizing justice for her daughter. My feelings of guilt started to rise again after I learned that Patsy had died. I'm looking for answers to questions that have plagued me since the murder. I have no specific information about SBTC other than it means saved by the cross to some. My ex became a religious fanatic after the murder. I've searched the term with relation to defense, and the only information I found was speed brake thrust controller used on the space shuttle. LMCO had the space shuttle contract at the time. I do not think it would be legal or prudent to post my ex's name. The FBI is quite aware of who he is. I'm just baffled as to why they are not solving this crime. Wow. Okay. So back to Affectionate Fly here. Super side note, I used to work in Marietta, Georgia, early 2000s. I used to wax the eyebrows of some middle school girls who went to school with Burke. They were friends with him. They told me that business associates of his dad killed Jonbenet. I actually went over this in the previous episode as well. Wow. Okay, so, yeah, I mean, this is all very, very mind-shocking. There's definitely some kind of in order for all of the variables to line up, there's got to be some kind of an overlap here. Okay, so let's go back to the ring theory that there's some kind of government ring operating and is responsible for this. On Cav Def, there's another curiosity we did not discuss here. I mean, this is all quite crazy. So, this is straight from cavdef.org. Law enforcement response, Boulder Police Department. Detective Linda Arndt of the Boulder PD requested assistance numerous times throughout her investigation at the Ramsey home, which never arrived. The BPD response was lackadaisical and prevented the field detectives like Arndt from properly securing the crime scene. Such a failure was later pinned on her, indicating the department tried to make her into a scapegoat. And again, I went over this in the previous episode. Was that all by design? Because why would they not respond to help her? According to an FBI agent who advised the Boulder police, the high-level command staff, quote, inhibited the officers and the detectives from doing the job that they knew they needed to do, end quote, by separating the Ramsey parents before questioning them. Threats against Linda Arndt, Steve Thomas, and Bob Whitson. Insistence on a PDI theory. Groupthink by Kobe, Eller, and Thomas. Misrepresentation of the CBI handwriting results. No follow-up on John's shirt fibers purportedly being found in Jonbenet's underwear. Linda Arndt facing retaliation, such as stories damaging her reputation being leaked by Steve Thomas, and ultimately fearing for her life from members of her own department. Boulder County DA. The Boulder County DA's office under Alex Hunter was inappropriately differential to the Ramseys. A likely factor in this was John Ramsey was hiring lawyers from the firm Haddon, Morgan, and Foreman, who had close ties to Colorado's Democratic power structure, including Hunter's office. Hunter himself had a reputation for being very hands-off as a prosecutor to the point of protecting drug traffickers and sexual predators. The DA staff, which had frequently held friendly meetings with the Ramsey's lawyers, gave over key evidence in the case to the defense team. At one point, the police stopped sharing their most sensitive information with the DA's office, and shortly thereafter, their computers were hacked into. Refusal to authorize search warrants that the police requested. So from all this information here, it seems like there might have been some good cops here trying to do an honest investigation, but they were blocked. So it wasn't 100% failure on the part of the Boulder PD. Despite some willingness to work with journalists like Steven Singular, he also tried to prevent Singular from pursuing leads into prominent pedophiles within Boulder that might damage the city's reputation. Boulder activists Evan Ravitz and Bob McFarland were blocked from presenting evidence about pedophile rings to the grand jury, even as the defense handwriting experts were allowed to testify. That's curious. When the grand jury indicted both parents on accessories to Jonbenet Ramsey's murder, Hunter not only refused to prosecute it, but he hid the indictment. 9 years later, his successor, Mary Lacey, issued a controversial public exoneration of the Ramseys from guilt in their daughter's murder. Lacey's exoneration, which was based on DNA, exonerated the Ramseys from something the grand jury never charged them with. A blatant sham that would not be revealed for 5 years until the grand jury indictments became public. Yeah, I mean, there's funny business across the board here, and then I'll just reiterate again, no DNA has been tested using the latest generation technology. federal authorities. Now, this is really curious here. The FBI did not immediately step in to take control of the investigation, allowing the inexperienced Boulder police to handle it instead. Considering that the crime initially presented itself as a kidnapping of a defense contractor executive's daughter by a foreign faction, which had terrorism, national security implications, as well as the appearance of a victim being transported across state lines, there was no legitimate reason why the FBI did not directly involve itself from the beginning. Donald Freed, in highlighting this irregularity, argues that the most likely explanation for this breach of protocol would be a stand-down order from a higher-level authority, such as FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C., or maybe even higher than that. This would in turn indicate high-level political will to subvert a proper investigation. The scrubbing of the Ramsey cell phone records purportedly sealed on the orders of the White House. Okay, this is really weird. So the Ramsey cell phone records are just going to be sealed forever, so nobody ever wants this solved? Now, you could argue that to protect an investigation, certain steps need to be taken. But how many years, how many decades need to pass before they would be unsealed? Just a question there. Just a question. I mean, does anybody think the investigation is on the up and up and there isn't some kind of an overlap here from something else going on? I'm not claiming to know what that something is, but a potential ring of criminals in the political elite would explain this, would it not? During the Wonderland child pornography raids in 1998, one of those arrested was Richard Bruce Thomas, a computer consultant in Fort Collins, Colorado. His role in a network is unknown, but he was found dead the next day of a purported suicide. The police never examined his hard drive, despite his proximity to Boulder and nature as a potential suspect. Interestingly, the Wonderland raids commenced on September 1st with Bruce Thomas being found dead on September 6th, and the Ramsey grand jury convened shortly thereafter on September 15th. The timing could suggest that the FBI suppressed the grand jury, which risked revealing a pedophile ring until the raids were done, either to protect their sting-op or, if their motivation was more sinister, to give themselves a chance to clean up the evidence. I mean, this just does not look good no matter how you look at it. I mean, just the level of coincidence here. I mean, this stratospheric coincidence stack. I mean, this is just absolutely insane. So for people who think that none of these rings exist, I mean, this is Washington Post, Thursday, September 3rd, 1998. Internet child porn ring raided by Michael Grunwald. Law enforcement agents in the U.S. and 13 other countries yesterday raided nearly 200 suspected members of an internet child pornography ring, a secretive network described by authorities as the largest and most prolific ever uncovered. The U.S. Customs Service, which seized computers from 32 American suspects yesterday in 22 states, said the online Wonderland Club required all members to possess thousands of sexually explicit images of children, some of them as young as 18 months. Club members then used secret passwords to meet in private internet hideaways where they traded the images like baseball cards, officials said. The ring was targeted for possessing and distributing child pornography, but in some cases the images pictured club members molesting their own relatives, the officials said. Officials around the world described the Wonderland raids as the most extensive child porn sting in history and as troubling glimpse of the future of law enforcement. The digital age, they said, has made it much easier to commit crimes like this, money laundering, intellectual property theft, while erasing traditional borders between nations. Yesterday's sweep included targets in the U.S., Australia, and 12 European countries. Investigators said they are aware of additional Wonderland members in 33 other countries, from Japan to Israel to Brazil. So, I mean, clearly this is just very, very high profile, and nobody ever talks about this anymore. I mean, I really don't remember this being referenced. Just skipping along the article here, American officials said the prom had its origins in a high-profile 1996 case involving a California-based child porn ring known as the Orchid Club. One of the defendants in that case implicated a British club members, and authorities in the UK soon linked him to the much larger and more sophisticated Wonderland ring. And I wonder if this Colorado ring has anything to do with Nancy Krebs or the people she unfortunately came into contact with. I mean, yeah, and the timing with not just the timing, but the fact that if this is true, and they did not allow any evidence in the grand jury in the direction of any rings to be presented, that's really weird. Regional pedophile networks. Many prominent people in Boulder disappeared from public life shortly after Jonbenet's murder. There are indications from various accounts which Stephen Singular gathered that many high-level citizens in Boulder were involved in pedophilia. Local activists Evan Ravitz and Bob McFarland also pursued this angle extensively and tried to comment on this to the grand jury, as was their legal right, but Alex Hunter blocked them. The judge originally set to preside over the grand jury was suddenly replaced and left to go to Cairo. He had previously been involved in a child custody case where he kept children with their abusive parents, the Ballards, who prostituted them out. Yeah, I mean, just the level of coincidence here is just stratospheric, if this is all true on CavDef. And again, I don't see a source for this here, but regarding, I mean, everything that I've double-checked on CavDef did check out thus far. Again, that doesn't mean that's true, but everything that I've double-checked so far regarding news articles and court documents on CavDef, it apparently checked out, so this is really crazy. James Parton. Early in 1998, James Parton was arrested in Columbus, Ohio for distributing child pornography online. A former resident of Idaho Springs, Colorado, he was found to have a photograph of Jonbenet Ramsey in his possession. Parton also became a suspect in the disappearance of 14-year-old Beth Miller, who vanished in Idaho Springs back in 1983 when Parton lived there, due to him having newspaper clippings on her case and a map of Idaho Springs with 3 X's marked. One anonymous source alleged that Parton was continually let off on his crimes due to his well-connected father, Alan Parton, a high-ranking military officer who allegedly molested his own children. I mean, this is all such dark stuff. I mean, this is just absolute insanity here. And also regarding James Parton, I mean, this is all just very, very crazy. I'm going to go over one more article here, which makes a lot of connections. So, roseforjustice.com posted this, September 21st, 2020. Was Jonbenet an unknown victim of child pornography crime as multi-billion-dollar business? Child porn and abuse is linked to cyberspace social media employees fired from IT jobs such as Lockheed Martin and ... At the time of the murder, John Ramsey worked at the forefront of the tech world, starting a computer company in the 80s that he would merge with 2 other firms in 1988 to create Access Graphics, which sold Unix-based computer systems and would go on to become a billion-dollar company. Ramsey to leave his company, Denver Post, November 6, 2015. John Ramsey will be out of a job with the computer distribution company he started is taken over by another corporate giant. At the time, Ramsey will leave as president of Access Graphics, a firm he started in 1988 and then sold to Lockheed Martin Corporation in 91. Lockheed Martin kept him on and promoted Ramsey to president and chief executive officer. Once the sale is completed to General Electric, Ramsey will be retained as a consultant. Access Graphics was sold to General Electric in 1997. His net worth was reported at $6.4 million May 1st, 96. Prior to his daughter's murder in December 96. He announced to his employees that he no longer be president of Access Graphics once the acquisition is completed, which would be before the end of the year, said Hal Haddon, Ramsey's attorney. Haddon had been advising Ramsey on the investigation into the death of his daughter, Jonbenet, who was found strangled in the Ramsey home December 26, 96. With Ramsey saying he needed time to grieve, Lockheed named an interim president to replace him. Ramsey later returned to head the company as the murder investigation of his daughter dragged on. June 3rd, 2018. The Daily Beast reported police in Arizona say the murder of prominent forensic psychiatrist Stephen Pitt earlier this week is believed to be connected to several other killings near Phoenix. Pitt, perhaps most well known for his work in the Jonbenet Ramsey case in 1996, was shot dead outside his office Thursday night. The next day, paralegals Valeria Sharp and Laura Anderson were killed near the Scottsdale law firm, police said. Shortly after investigators said they believe the 3 killings are linked, a 4th victim turned up on Saturday. I mean, this is insane. So let's look at this article. Let's do a quick sidebar on abcnews.go.com. Forensic psychiatrist who consulted on Jonbenet Ramsey case killed outside his office. Stephen Pitt helped with a number of famous cases during his career by Mark Osborne, June 2nd, 2018. Okay, so he was found shot to death outside his Phoenix office on Thursday night. Witnesses told police they heard an argument between 2 people outside the office, followed by gunfire, according to Phoenix ABC affiliate KNXV. Police said it is unknown whether the shooting is connected to Pitt or Pitt's work. Police described the suspected shooter as a bald Caucasian man wearing a dark hat with a short brim. Stephen Pitt and Associates is headquartered in Phoenix, but Pitt worked on a number of nationally known cases, including Ramsey's murder in 1996. The murder of the 6-year-old beauty pageant competitor found dead in the basement of her family's Boulder, Colorado home has never been solved. Pitt was brought on by Boulder police and the DA to consult on the case in February 97. In a 99 profile of Pitt by the Phoenix New Times, centered around the Ramsey investigation, the psychiatrist was described as, quote, a street-smart, openly ambitious, wise guy who seems most comfortable helping detectives sort out the pathology, the psychopathology that has led someone known or unknown to commit a crime, end quote. Pitt's website is a laundry list of prominent cases in which he consulted, including the Columbine High School massacre, the Jodi Arias trial, the sexual assault civil case of the NFL quarterback Ben Roethlisberger, the Kobe Bryant sexual assault case, and the Phoenix serial murderer known as the Baseline Killer. After Pitt's consultation on the Baseline Killer, the suspect, Mark Goudreau, was convicted and sentenced to death in 2011 for 9 murders. Pitt, 59, was the father of 2 children. An article from the Mirror, mirror.co.uk, Jonbenet Ramsey, serial killer hunted for 4 murders, including shooting of murdered child beauty queen psychiatrist. June 2nd, 2018. Okay. A high-profile forensic psychiatrist who consulted on a famous American murder investigation into the death of a child beauty queen has been revealed to be among the victims of a serial killer being hunted in the U.S. Dr. Stephen Pitt, 59, known for his involvement in the Jonbenet Ramsey case and raising suspicions about the 6-year-old's family, was shot dead outside his office in Arizona Thursday. He was the first of now 4 victims who have been shot in the area, others of which are understood to have connections to the legal world. Witnesses told police they heard a loud argument followed by gunshots when Dr. Pitt was leaving his office, and officials said he died at the scene. You know what's weird, though? If this really is some kind of professional hit to clean up loose ends or whatever, why would there be an argument? Wouldn't they just kill him quietly? Unless maybe they tried and they couldn't and it turned into something, but... The shooter fled the area, and Phoenix Police Sergeant Vince Lewis said the shooter was described as an adult male, bald and wearing a dark-colored hat with a short brim. Lewis also said the police had no information as to whether the murder was related to Mr. Pitt's work. On Friday, 2 paralegals, Valeria Sharp, 48, and Laura Anderson, 49, were shot and killed at the law office where they worked in Phoenix at about 2:15 p.m. Wow, right in the middle of the day? Police are now investigating a 4th shooting in Scottsdale, Arizona, and police said they believe the 4 murders are related. The psychiatrist raised suspicions about Jonbenet's family and believed that the pineapple found in the child's digestive tract, which her mother denied she ate, was evidence the family were involved in a cover-up. He believed the pineapple proved Jonbenet ate not long before she died. Her mother, Patsy, claimed Jonbenet hadn't eaten any fruit before her death, but the mother's fingerprints were found on the fruit bowl, which made Pitt believe the family weren't telling the truth about what happened. Pitt had previously told People magazine, quote, the fingerprints on the bowl or cup that were used to give Jonbenet the pineapple were Patsy's fingerprints. It suggests someone is not telling the truth about what happened at that home that night, end quote. Pitt also worked on the 99 Columbine High School shooting that saw 15 people killed. He recently worked on a string of shootings in the Maryvale area, and his friend and fellow psychologist David Weinstock speculated that someone connected to one of his cases was behind the murder. He told Arizona Republic, I could be wrong, but the timing and circumstances sound a lot like someone who was waiting outside his office for him. I suspect this was one who either got out after Stephen helped put him away, or someone whose case he was working on and felt threatened about what Steve would do. Yeah, I mean, this is all very, very weird. So the only follow-up I could find on these 4 murders, Daily Mail, June 4th, 2018, suspected gunman Suspected gunman who killed Jonbenet Ramsey psychiatrist, 2 paralegals, and a hypnotherapist in Arizona murder spree kills himself after being cornered by police at a motel. Police were trying... Okay, a suspect linked to a series of murders in Arizona in recent days has killed himself after being surrounded by police at a motel. Police were trying to make contact with the suspect at Extended Stay Hotel in Scottsdale Monday morning when he opened fire on them from his room. Authorities said they gassed the motel room and sent in a robot where they found the suspect had fatally shot himself. Law enforcement sources identified the suspect as 56-year-old Dwight Lamont Jones. ABC News reported. While police have not yet confirmed a motive, sources told NBC the shootings may be linked to his bitter divorce from his wife. Court records show his wife filed for divorce in 2009, but the case dragged on until last year due to various elements, including child support. Police said they were in the process of evacuating the surrounding rooms when the suspect started shooting. No officers returned fire, according to Phoenix Police Sergeant Vince Lewis. The hotel raid came after authorities identified a 4th professional found fatally shot in the 3-day span of killings. Authorities say they have strong evidence that links the killings of a Jonbenet Ramsey forensic psychiatrist on Thursday, 2 paralegals on Friday, and the death of a hypnotherapist on Saturday. Dr. Stephen Pitt, a prominent forensic psychiatrist who assisted in high-profile murder cases, including the Jonbenet Ramsey mystery in Colorado and a notorious Phoenix serial killer investigation, was the first victim found dead near Scottsdale Thursday. Witnesses reported hearing a loud argument, then gunfire outside Pitt's office. It has since emerged that Pitt had carried out a court-mandated mental health test on Jones in the early years of his divorce battle. Police said the killings Friday of paralegals Valeria Sharp, 48, and Laura Anderson, 49, at the law office were related to the Pitt shooting, but we're still trying to determine exactly what linked the 3 victims. The 2 women worked at the law firm of an attorney who represented Jones's wife in their divorce case. A 4th professional, Marshall Levine, was found shot inside a Scottsdale office building shortly after midnight Saturday. The 72-year-old worked as a hypnotherapist and life coach. He also provided marriage and divorce counseling. Jones had been seeing a therapist at the same building, but it isn't yet clear if he was Levine's patient. Yeah, this is really weird, although if there was a mass cover-up, is this how they would do it? They would Manchurian candidate this guy to carry out the plot, a guy who actually had motive and a link to all these people, so it could easily be swept under the rug. Again, I am not alleging that this is what happened or this is true in any way. This is Mindshock. I'm not alleging anything is true or untrue. But if there is a vast conspiracy, how would it be carried out? Is this a convenient way to do it? Just asking a question. But continuing back to Rose for Justice here, the truth or conspiracy theory. Did the Ramseys have any connection to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, the international sex traffickers of little girls? YourTango.com posted, now the internet has gotten interested in her case again after a photo of Jonbenet resurfaced showing the child smiling into the camera next to a woman who looks shockingly like sex trafficking suspect Ghislaine Maxwell. Longtime romantic and business associate of Jeffrey Epstein. She was arrested earlier this month on charges of sex trafficking related to Epstein's sex abuse crimes. It's interesting that the Epstein and Maxwell Island appeared to be cultish going back to the days of the Egyptians. And the beautiful state of Colorado is alleged to have a myriad of Satanists and also known as Luciferians across their state who allegedly engage in secret ceremonies, including the city of Boulder, Colorado. Also, YourTango posted, neither Maxwell's representatives nor spokespeople for the Ramseys family have commented on the photo so far. However, just a little research shows that Maxwell had some ties to Denver, Colorado, where the Ramseys lived, and that's enough to keep the rumor and conspiracy theories going. On June 23rd, 2016, the Daily Camera published Ramsey murder suspect charged in Boulder child porn case. As more than half a dozen national television productions prepare to mark the nearly 2 decades that have passed since the murder of Jonbenet Ramsey, a suspect in the notorious unsolved slangs is in Boulder County Jail on charges of sexually exploiting a child. Gary Howard Oliva, 52, was booked without bond into the jail Friday in 2016 on a case brought by the Boulder Police Department, the same agency that has labored for 2 decades to bring resolution to the Christmas night 96 murder of 6-year-old child and beauty queen. This writer's opinion about the homeless suspect and his description falls short of being capable of plotting out a kidnapping for ransom, but I could be wrong. The suspect is a homeless man and child predator. He smokes marijuana. Oliva, according to reporters, is diagnosed as a schizophrenic. It appears to me, as a layperson, that this suspect would be incapable of plotting out and kidnapping for ransom and demanding an odd amount of money, such as $118,000 that just so happens to be the same amount of John Ramsey's Christmas bonus. And as we just learned earlier, the same amount of not one, not two, but 3 different disgruntled employees and or associates with the company. What if the person writing the note was writing about someone he or she was very close to and giving a clue with or without intent? Furthermore, it appears that Oliva would be incapable of writing a 3-page ransom and be so specific with details considering his description. It's my opinion that the suspect may be capable of rape and murder, but it's difficult to believe that this homeless schizophrenic on drugs would even know how to write a 3-page detailed letter demanding a $118,000 ransom. Furthermore, city spokeswoman Sarah Huntley added, quote, "The police department diligently investigated these current allegations and believe there is probable cause to support the arrest, but we're currently not comfortable ruling anybody out as a suspect or ruling anybody in as a suspect in the Ramsey case," end quote. The Ledge newspaper reported on January 3rd, 2020 and January 5th, 2020, the following story online linked to Samsung, phone, and eBay and Lockheed Martin, where he was formerly employed. Polk County Sheriff's Office detectives arrested Jose Areza of Orange Valley Lane around 4:26 p.m. after investigating a National Center for Missing and Exploited Children cyber tip line report received in August concerning Areza's email address. The report noted numerous child porn video and image files of prepubescent children were sent to his email. Areza was employed at Lockheed Martin as an IT specialist, according to reports. When detectives asked to see his Samsung cell phone, he gave them permission, and they didn't find any media on the device, but they did find the eBay application installed. He faces $1,000 bond for tampering with physical evidence charge, a 3rd-degree felony, and is being held on no bond for 16 child porn charges, which are 2nd-degree felonies. Case number 2, former Lockheed employee and former NASA employee by Sister Giordano, Syracuse. The Syracuse man accused of having child pornography in his home computer was briefly employed by Syracuse University. Donald Leskew, 60, of Berkeley Drive, earned his doctorate in electrical engineering from SU in 2011, and officials confirmed he had worked at the university in 2012. Leskew's LinkedIn profile lists his employment history as a consultant at NASA and a systems manager at Lockheed Martin before managing his own company, Leskew Associates. You know what's also weird? I just keep going back to Kathy O'Brien's account where she said she was taken to different NASA facilities as well, not just military, but specifically NASA. Kind of weird. On Friday, Syracuse police arrested Leskew in connection with an investigation stemming from a September 12, 2012 search warrant at his home. During the search, detectives found child pornography on his home computer, police said. Leskew was charged with a felony, possessing sexual performance by child, and was issued an appearance ticket. He was ordered to appear in Onondaga County Court Wednesday, February 27, 2013. Case number 3. Fox 35 Orlando, Grady Judd on child porn arrests video, including Lockheed Martin former IT employee. Child porn arrests. Polk Sheriff Grady Judd says they've arrested 16 men, 3 theme park employees, including Disney, nurse, and a pharmacist of child porn because of more than obvious reasons we can never, ever locate all the children. One man is charged with the most counts of anyone on the board here today, and a married man with kids employed as an IT specialist in communication for Lockheed Martin with a master's was arrested and fired. John and Patsy Ramsey were both indicted for child abuse resulting in death and accessory to first-degree murder by a Boulder County grand jury that reviewed the case for 13 months before being disbanded in October 2000. The indictments were not disclosed to the public at that time and only became public 13 years later after a lawsuit filed against Garnett secured their release. Also, those indictments were never prosecuted by former Boulder DA Alex Hunter. However, he concluded they were based on evidence insufficient to secure a conviction at trial. Perhaps we will never know the truth when a 6-year-old award-winning beauty queen, 6-year-old child was brutally murdered and allegedly sexually injured, as reports by several writers. However, the Ramseys denied the accusations as false and denied all accusations. One thing is for sure, we know Jonbenet is in heaven with the Lord and surrounded by angels. The important thing to take away is that perhaps large companies hiring IT computer personnel in social media, cyberspace, NASA, who are masters at computer technology, will screen their employees more diligently when it comes to predators who secretly use their abilities to spy on children and prey on children and engage in child pornography or seduce them for instant self-gratification and for the multi-billion-dollar money laundering international illegal and unlawful criminal business. Remember, even the Microsoft billionaire Bill Gates, who was linked to the international child trafficker Jeffrey Epstein, stepped down as the chair of Microsoft, recently hit the news when his employee was arrested at his mansion. Rick Allen Jones, reportedly employed as an engineer at the Gates home, is accused of trading pornography images via Gmail. He is charged with possession of child pornography. The 51-year-old has been connecting pornography for a decade, and Gates or other employees remained unaware for 10 years, allegedly, according to King County prosecutors December 31st, 2014. What is more amazing is that these men are hired and work for these wealthy CEOs for years, and no one notices that they're engaging in child pornography top down, or do they? Why aren't the social media, cyberspace, major corporations, and Wall Street investors, as well as NASA, who hire IT geniuses who use their positions to target children for sexual abuse, be held accountable as well, instead of dismissed as if firing someone is going to end the problem, instead of fining them and paying reparations to the families? Rose Colombo, activist and advocate for justice and former CEO of Women Fight Back, stated the world needs to wake up that trafficking involves babies and toddlers, little children who are used and abused and many snuffed out, many trafficked as sex slaves and raped several times per day by adult males who are the lowest form of life on the planet. No matter who they are and how much money they have, they are insecure and very dangerous to society. Colombo is a longtime advocate for justice, referred to as crusader for justice by the media. She proposed laws to legislatures in California and nationally that were implemented. Her books are Irwin Award-winning and 5-star reviews. Obamacare, Dinosaurs, Rednecks, and Radicals is a political satire on the redistribution of wealth and depopulation, as well as a self-help book titled Fight Back Legal Abuse. Okay. All right, so a lot of information in this article here that there have been all of these vast arrests. I mean, there's also a mass CIA arrest scandal, which I had referenced before as well. I mean, there's just so many layers of all of this. Also, Affectionate Fly mentioned this on the Reddit, that Kevin Shipp, former CIA operative, stated on Twitter that Lockheed Martin was a cover of a CIA op. The tweet was, of course, since deleted, but does anybody else think it's kind of weird that Francis Sheldon, this pedophile and criminal scumbag who owned North Fox Island, and John Ramsey's father just happened to be the one who approved runways or built runways on North Fox Island, right next to Beaver Island? And that Patsy Ramsey, through winning a pageant Miss West Virginia, was connected to this senator, allegedly the guy, the MK Ultra handler of Kathy O'Brien, who allegedly also saw John Ramsey's name on a manifest, even if it's a different John Ramsey, going to Beaver Island, right next to North Fox Island in Michigan. Patsy Ramsey from West Virginia. I mean, is this too many coincidences for most people? I mean, regardless of whether the Ramseys are innocent, because theoretically, they could still be innocent even with all of these connections. But the connections aren't necessarily coincidental. Because if high-ranking officials know about them and these connections are real, that doesn't mean they intentionally harmed their daughter in any way, but clearly there's something else going on with other individuals known to them, and it is not coincidental. That's the point that I'm making here. That is the major takeaway point here. There's actually plenty more to come. We went over mostly the Access Graphics link and the overlap to possibly military or intelligence agencies and political affiliations. All of this seemingly coincidental to those that believe it has nothing to do with anything. I mean, the coincidence theorists, I mean, the field day they can have with the past 2 episodes. I mean, there's more coincidences here than even the most devout coincidence theorists can shake a stick at. So there's, believe it or not, there's still plenty more POIs and suspects to cover, and even more in the direction of the Krebs account, the Kathy O'Brien account, and all of these overlaps. Hope everybody found another edition of Mindshock True Crime interesting and informative. If you want to help support the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. You can also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube for access to exclusive streams and chats. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Like and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patreons, you get priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcaster requests. You can also be a guest in the podcast depending on your tier. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.